Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about something called adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACE. Now, ACE is often the underlying factor that causes a lifetime of depression, antisocial behavior, addiction, rage, incarceration, numerous chronic illnesses, and even suicide. Now, I recently watched a documentary called Paper Tigers, which is based on the true story of Lincoln High School in Walla Walla, Washington. My guest, Jim Sporleder, was the principal who took over that school. And he saw that the traditional model was simply not working. And he, particularly with children who suffer from advanced childhood experiences, he moved the school to a trauma-informed model, which has led to some just amazing results. Enough of listening to me. Let's hear Jim's story. Jim, welcome to Energy Healing and Integrated Wellness.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Jim, as I watched the interview with you and I watched the documentary, it's just incredible. And you described Lincoln High as a continuation school. For the viewers out there, what is a continuation school?
Yeah, in Washington State, continuation is a term used across the country. In Washington State, it would be called an alternative high school. Unfortunately, too often the continuation high schools or the alternative high schools become dumping grounds for kids that aren't making it in the traditional comprehensive high schools. They could be struggling with behavior, struggling with attendance, all kinds of issues. And, I think our even at the federal level, everybody's graded. And so schools are graded on their graduation rates. And that's the number one reason why alternative schools tend to be the dumping ground, because the pressure to have high graduation rates, I call it the march of the kids that aren't going to make it in the spring. All of a sudden that's when you see high schools calling the alternative high schools and just saying, hey, I've got a junior, I got a senior for you. I know you can do a great job with these kids, and I used to share with them, we can do a great job with them if you'd get them to me as a freshman or a sophomore, but I don't have a wand that can take a kid from 4 credits to 22 in 4 months. Right. So that's kind of the history of alternative high schools. But the trauma-informed movement is a national movement. The wave is picking up across the country. Unfortunately, it's being embraced much more with elementary schools. And then kind of the higher you go up the chain, it's a little bit more challenging. So when you look at a comprehensive traditional high school, it's a pretty tough to create the mind shift that needs to happen in order to implement a trauma-informed model.
One of the things I saw both in the movie or the documentary and in the interview I saw that you gave to a bunch of educators is you said the traditional model of zero tolerance doesn't work. Why did you see that? What brought you to that conclusion when you went to Lincoln?
Well, I have to preface my comment with is that for my career as a classroom teacher and as an administrator, I was very student focused, but my discipline, I thought I was teaching, but my conversion to a trauma-informed model came when I found out that my discipline was punishing kids and not teaching them. And so 2/3 of my career was traditional and discipline. I believed that discipline was a choice and that it was my responsibility to help kids take responsibility for their behavior and learn from it and move on. And wasn't until I was exposed to what toxic stress is the impact it has on the brain, and that behavior is not a choice when a kid's at the midbrain to the stem, because that's where he's functioning from. It's actually physiologically impossible to problem solve at that point or even to learn. And once I got that information, and that it actually was out of this kid's control versus in their control, it drove that fire within me to want to be that, I call it the power of one, to be, and our school to be the power of one, where we as caring adults develop those relationships, and we understand that the discipline and the challenges are coming from outside of school, not from within.
Absolutely.
And, I think that's very important to be able to understand that, because a kid comes in and tells you to F off, the first reaction is get him out of here. I'm offended and suspend them. I don't want them back in my class. That's just kind of that traditional punitive approach versus holy smokes, something's going on here. We need to get to the bottom of this and find out. And the difference, Frank, was traditionally I brought the kids in as they came in. So I was dealing with a lot of escalated kids, and sometimes they'd trigger me. And when you have a dysregulated adult with a dysregulated kid, it's not going to work out real well. You're gonna do the suspensions and the more I would call traditional approach. However, when a student comes in highly escalated and you let them know, hey, I need to give you time to calm down. Your brain's not in a position to problem solve right now. And you give them that time, and it's usually, it doesn't, 10, 15 minutes, you can bring them in and just say, hey, I really wanted to have a meaningful conversation with you. What do you think caused you to tell your teacher to F off? And my goodness, the original consequence for that was a 3-day suspension. And then when I started asking kids what's going on, they started telling me from the get-go. It wasn't like one here, another one 10 kids later. They started talking to me. And then in my head, I'm thinking, my goodness, I've been suspending kids and missing the story, which misses the opportunity to wrap support around them. So really was the kids they were the fuel that kept the fire burning, and where we as a staff wanted to learn more and more how to be effective and how to really create that supportive environment for them to be able to share, and then to wrap services around them. And traditionally, the consequence came right up front, trauma informed. There's a misconception that we don't hold kids accountable, and that's so totally wrong. And we're not holding kids accountable, we're failing them. It's how we hold them accountable. And after processing with these kids, at the end of the conversation, I bring up the consequence, and they were calm. They wanted to make it right. They didn't feel good about what had transpired, and it also drove connection. I mean, I had so many kids get up, and before they walked out, they just said, hey, Sporleder, thanks for talking to me. It really helped a lot. And they walked out with a consequence. And like I said, there was really that, I want to make it right. It wasn't the teacher's fault. I got a lot of stress going on.
Wow. It's amazing when you talk to somebody. You made a statement that just blew me away. And you said we have to move the discussion from what's wrong with this child to what occurred to this child. Now, many of these kids don't want to talk. How did you get them to open up?
One thing that we know about those who come from trauma is we've taken their voice away. I mean, you can put student, child, adult in that statement, and they don't feel like they have a voice. And when you give them a voice, that draws connection. And when I'm listening and asking for their voice, and they know that I'm not only valuing their voice, I'm validating their feelings. You know, I can do all of that without validating the infraction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the seeking of their voice that kind of for me was the aha moment, in that brought value. And kids would say something about, you know, we're close to being homeless or whatever, and I would just go, wow, that's got to be tough. You know, I'd validate that, and then it's like, man, we got to wrap support around you and try to get some support around your family. And I'd bring in community partners to help with that. And it's really, the bottom line is the issues that are coming or that we're dealing with in school are coming from the outside in. They obviously they'll trigger at school, but the true cause is something that they're dealing with outside of school. And I think when we know that, we can drop our personal mirror and not take things personal. You know, boy, I mean, if a kid told me to F off in my traditional mold, I mean, she better put her seatbelt on, versus letting that, not taking it personal, and just and realizing there's something deeper than that,
Exactly.
and going forward with it. But even when I go out to high schools today, if I'm in a high school or doesn't matter what school, if I'm there for the day, I always say I got to have time with kids. And I was just in a high school here 3 weeks ago, and the kids predominantly Black, and I asked to speak to, you know, they brought these kids to me, and here's this old white guy sitting there, you know, and I just said to him, man, your voice is so important to me, and share with me about your school, share with me the things you love about it, and share with me the things that you think need improving. And that it breaks the ice every time, because I'm seeking their voice. And I'll tell you what, I interview the teachers as well, and I get it straight from the kids, and it's pretty powerful.
It is. It's incredible. Some of the stories of these ACE episodes are incredible. A young lady who said she stayed out all night with her skateboard, waiting for her parents to pass out before she would go home, not knowing where they're going to sleep that night. And you said something that really triggered me. It was, you cannot learn when you're in a constant flight, fight, or freeze mode.
Right.
I was in the military during the Vietnam War, and that was one of the things. The average soldier's age was 19. Okay, so you're 19 years old, you're scared to death. Everything that they're telling you, you're not hearing, because you're afraid, you're scared. Is that what you had to overcome with the schools, with these children?
Well, I think the part that a trauma-informed model does is it creates safety around that. It's, if a student feels safe, then they're going to feel connected. And I think that's our jobs, is to create a culture and an identity of safety, where it's safe to come in. And you know, some kids, they're dealing with some, I mean, a girl's not going to come in and say, I was sexually abused last night, but she can come in and say to me, man, I'm so stressed out, Sporleder. You know, I don't really want to talk about what's causing it, but I'm super stressed. And that's all I needed to know. I didn't need to know ACE scores or what ACEs they've had. I started with their stress. 1 to 10, tell me where you are with your stress. And I mean, a lot of my kids, it was 7, 8. And I'd say, that's too high. You can't handle that. And I said, I can't handle it. And so how can we work together? And I said, I can teach you some strategies to help you when you're at that 7, 8 to help you calm down, or I can connect you with a counselor that can give you some additional skills and strategies to help you so that you can function when you're under that kind of stress.
It seems a core principle here is dignity, number one, and respect that it's not you, child, it's the circumstances. And let's separate the two and not lump them together. Like, this is a defiant child.
Well, when we look at these kids that come from trauma, they're coming to us with zero social cues. They have not been taught boundaries. They have not been taught, they have no connection to consequences, and their homes are extremely unpredictable. And we know that the person in the home whose responsibility is to create a loving environment so my brain can develop in a healthy way is causing me all the harm and the pain. And so when these kids come, to me, we have a huge responsibility to teach them where the boundaries are, teach them how to regulate, teach them to be able to self-reflect and know when they're about ready to lose it, and what options do I have when I'm at that point. It just, everything we did was new, Frank. I mean, we didn't have a lot. Well, we didn't know we were the first high school to do it, but we didn't have a lot of we had to figure a lot of this stuff as we went. We put the airplane together while we were flying, but man, those kids, we wanted to transform their lives. They were transforming ours, and they were teaching us a ton. And that's what helped allow us to be able to get to the issues quicker, more effectively, was just kind of following their lead.
One of the things I heard you say was you became an advocate for in-school suspensions. Tell us about that.
Well, I thought in my traditional mode, I thought out of school suspension, you had to send the message to them that particular behavior is just, there's zero tolerance.
Right.
And when I came back and told staff, hey, you're not going to be seeing me suspend kids as you have. We're going to use in-school consequences as much as possible. It was an enlightening experience for me, because once I made that shift, all of a sudden I realized that kids who get suspended from school, when they get older, it's a free day out. They're walking the streets. There's no supervision at home, or you're putting them back into a home where all the pain and suffering's happening. So I realized, hey, having them here in school for the day, we still have this support and this family culture. And I never had kids that were suspended come in and say, hey, I need to get my homework that I missed. So when you look at in-school consequences, all of a sudden I'm holding the kid accountable because he's got to come to school.
Exactly.
Secondly, he's not falling behind, because when he's in the in-school suspension room, he's doing his work, or she's doing their work. And 3, I got a loving, nurturing adult in that room that has the capacity to say, hey, time to get down to work, and also has the capacity to say, boy, the student needs to process a little bit more. And I was fortunate to have that type of person in my in-school suspension room, and kids loved her. Kids would come by and see her at lunch, and but when she said, hey, it's time to work, they listened. And so all of this drives relationship. I mean, that's where we want to be. We want to be in relationship with as many kids as we possibly can. And this approach drives me with you. A traditional approach drives me against you.
How challenging was it to get your teachers or bring teachers in who agreed with this model and bought into this model? Was it a hard sell?
At the time that I brought it back to the building, at that point I had hired at least half of the staff. We were already relationship focused, even though we were traditional. We were working very hard to create a culture where the kids knew that they were respected and cared about. So I was able to get momentum behind the movement pretty quick, and we were seeing results immediately. And I didn't have 100%. I mean, I always say if you don't have 80% of your staff on board, I wouldn't even try it, because the naysayers that fight this approach, they make a lot of noise. They try to make it sound like it's a lot of people. And
right. Exactly.
Be sustainable, you got to have the majority.
One of the things as I've been reading and researching this after I watched you interview Jim, was that the ACE is not only impacting you in school and basically in life, it's shortening your life. I think you said that if 6 ACE events will take 20 years off your life.
Yeah, if you look at that ACE pyramid that is so predominant, it is the most accurate structure of predicting a person's life outcomes, future. It's more accurate than poverty. It's only second to special ed. And when you look at that, and if that's all we had, it would be very depressing and hopeless.
Yeah.
But with all the science, and as far as we've come with the science and the epigenetics and all of that, it all comes down that a loving, caring adult can offset those outcomes and create hope when a student's feeling hopelessness. And so that's the power of the research, is that if we want to make these changes, then we can provide hope, but we've got to become that solid, caring adult, consistent adult that loves unconditionally. We have to teach them what unconditional love is and what it means. Everybody deserves that. And again, the consistency, the safety, the seeking of voice. In the movie, it shows Stephen that, well, his first 2 years at Lincoln, I suspended him more than any kid in the building. He was so defiant and in your face, and he'd trigger me. And then the last 2 years, he had me as a trauma-informed principal, and all of a sudden, a kid that drove me nuts, all of a sudden was such a blessing. I mean, he would just come by and knock on my door and say, "You got a few minutes?" And he'd come in and want to process some of the things he was dealing with, and it was awesome.
It's incredible. One story I heard was a young man who had a lighter, and the teacher, that was Stephen. That's an amazing story, ladies and gentlemen. He had a lighter, went and gave it to the teacher, came to see you. What was the connection with that lighter?
When he came to see me?
Yes, sir.
Normally, I would have been able to allow a student to calm down. He was on the ceiling. So, nothing's 100%. So I had a kid on the ceiling right away, and I just said to him, "Stephen, make it easy, man. Hand me your lighter and get back to class. We don't need to make this a major issue." And he just kept saying, "You're not going to get my effing lighter." And finally I said, "Hey, bud, it's not a choice. You have to give it to me." And he just went nuts. I mean, came clear across the table and flipping me off right up in my face and telling me what I could do to myself, and went out my door and caused a huge commotion in the office. And that whole time, you know, I followed him to make sure he got off campus. I mean, and then I called his dad, and his dad and I had a very button heads relationship. You know, I was suspending him. He was always wanting to fight me over that. Called his dad and told him what happened, and I could just see his dad, you know, how am I going to fight this one? And I told him, I said, hey, I want him back in school tomorrow. And, you know, in that incident, you know, he showed up at his mom's house that morning. His dad dropped him off, and the house was empty, and he didn't know. His mom had a serious mental illness problem, and also he was freaking out because he didn't know where his mom was.
Right. And
so that particular day, the only control he had was of that lighter. Mm-hmm. And so when he came back, I first checked out. I said, hey, before we can even go on in this discussion, I got to know about your mom. Is she safe? Do you know where she's at? And he affirmed that. And I said, great. And then I said, hey, Stephen, I got to talk. We tell you we love you. We love you unconditionally. And I said, I want to share with you what that means. And I said, all those things you said to me yesterday, they're behind. I said, I'm not holding on to any of it. And this defiant kid that I'd been dealing with for 2 years, you know, when I said that, he goes, thank you. And then I said, I'm keeping the consequences in school, Stephen. I'm not sending you home. We're going to stay in school. And he thanked me for that. It was just so out of character of him, but he was calm. And from that day on, he and I, we were connected. I mean, in the movie, it's out of his words. He said it's one of the first times a principal talked to me about anything other than punishment. Well, the only other principal he had was me using punitive responses. So it drew us together. So ugly situation ended up connecting he and I, and it's just a wonderful relationship.
It's incredible. There's so much to be gained from this, and other than just the school setting. This is a thing in juvenile halls, and this could be something in the military and the post-military and in parolees and all kinds of different areas. So this is just incredible. Jim, we're just about out of time. What last thoughts do you want to leave with the viewers around the world on this?
I think you just brought it up, Frank, which is critical. And what we need to remember is you know, I'm an educator, so that's the perspective that you hear me talking about. But I'm fortunate that I come from a community that's a trauma-informed community. So while we were evolving, I had community partners where we had a common language and a common goal. So when we had a kid in crisis, we could get support around them so quick. Families, we could get support around so quick. The juvenile justice, the POs, we were on the same page. Our judges had trauma training. So it's a society challenge. And if we would change our approach as a society to a compassionate approach versus traditional punitive punishment, we would see amazing results.
Wow, that's so powerful. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Jim one more time. This is just an amazing story of transformation and healing for so many children. If you have not seen Paper Tigers, see it, watch it. It's a must-see. Now, to all the overworked teachers and overstressed teachers and underpaid teachers in the world, you make a difference, and you make a difference with 8 simple words. I see you. I hear you. You matter. It was a high school vice principal who took the time, this is a personal story, to reach out to my youngest daughter, who was labeled a bad kid from a trauma of abandonment and isolation after her mother had left the family. Those 8 words saved my daughter from a very dangerous path that she was headed. And that's a teacher who did that. Just amazing. If you'd like more information on Jim, you can go to see Paper Tigers, go to his website, contact me. We have a new website for our wellness system called We, W-E, the letter C, the number 3, We See Wellness @gmail.com. Send me a note. We want to hear your stories. We want to get advice from you. This conversation will be on ROKU TV and on my YouTube channel, Frank Zaccari. If you go to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. And as I say every week, none of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Jim showed us where many of those rocks are. Join me again next week. We look at another life-altering event. Thank you again, Jim.
Thank you.